go ahead and get started with today's Zoom training. So Allie, would you like to go to the next slide? Just good morning to everyone. It is a pleasure to have you on our Zoom training this morning. We are going to be presenting some guidance on completing the fixed meal price Food Service Management Company request for proposal template and the exhibits. To get started, we would like you to enter your name, your school district name, and email into the chat box. Mute your microphone, which I think everyone has. Turn your camera on if you would, that would be great. We want to see you, and we're going to be using the chat box for you to ask your questions as we proceed through today's training, and we will be answering those questions at the end of today's presentation. Next slide, Allie. So I want you to meet the nutrition services team who work with schools, SFAs. SFA stands for School Food Authority, that work with the contracting process. And so in our Lincoln office, we have Allie Lampman, who is our Zoom operator today, and she will be presenting a little bit later in the presentation. We have Erica Arter, and she will also be presenting. And then myself, I'm Sean Vondrachek. And then in our North Platte office, we have Laura Lutz, Jessica Fermounsky, and Aspen Shirley. And those individuals in our North Platte office, they conduct in their area what we call the first year review of the Food Service Management Company, which is a requirement from USDA. And the purpose is to see how the Food Service Management Company is operating in the initial year of the contract. Now in the Lincoln office, Allie, Erica, and I will be assisting you with the RFP contracting process. And we're your assigned specialist. In the emails that I have sent, I've indicated which specialist will be working with you throughout the process. So we are your contact people. We also conduct first year reviews in our area of the state. So welcome to everyone. And let's move to the next slide. So in our audience today, we have our SFAs that are currently in year 4, which is the final year of their food service management contract and are required to rebid. We also have our SFAs interested in pursuing a food service management company contract in school year 23-24 that are currently self-operated but have expressed interest to our office. So welcome. And then we have members of our staff also on learning more about this process. So just once again, if you've jumped on a little bit late, just enter your name, your school district name, and your email address in the chat. We would appreciate that. Thank you. And let's move to the next slide. So what's our agenda for today? Well, we want to talk about the steps in the contracting process. And the first step is for you to be thinking about what your current and future food service operation needs are. Very important. We're going to be reviewing the RFP process, the completion of the RFP template and the exhibits. We're going to make sure that you have a complete package. So Erica will be talking about completing the RFP checklist, and then where to save your files. And I know many of you have received an email this morning from Allie, and Allie will be explaining that process a little bit more in detail at the later part of the presentation. And then, of course, we'll wrap up with any questions and provide answers, hopefully, that you may have to make this process work as smoothly as possible. And we're going to wrap up by noon, so we're going to need to proceed through the information quickly, but we will have plenty of time for questions at the end. So thank you for agreeing to sit with us for 2.5 hours this morning. We really appreciate it. And let's move to the next slide. Well, as I said, you need to do your research. What are your current and future food service needs? And probably the best resource for you to utilize is the USDA guidance on contracting with a food service management company, guidance for school food authorities. And the link has been sent to you, but Erica is dropping that into the chat if you would like to save that to your favorites. This is a wonderful guidance manual from USDA. And the process, if you receive federal dollars, you must follow the federal regulations in procuring a contract, a food service management company contract. And so the guidance manual does a great job of explaining that. Moving to the next slide. So, as I mentioned, you need to be aware that this is a 1-year contract with the option of 4 annual 1-year renewals. The contract year begins July 1st and ends June 30th. So with that being said, you need to anticipate what your needs will be in the next 5 years. Not that you can't rebid your contract at any point of time, but it is a process, and we want to make sure your initial solicitation encompasses everything that you anticipate that may happen in the next 5 years, to perhaps maybe avoid having to go out for bid sooner. So what you need to take into consideration is, do you have any new buildings, new construction, remodels, any changes to grade configurations coming in the next 5 years? Is there a plan in place? That's a very important thing that would need to be included in your RFP to indicate, what are your needs moving forward? Do you plan to add any new programs such as preschool meals? What about an after-school snack program, implementing an after-school care snack program and offering snacks? Do you anticipate any different ways of operating your existing program, perhaps utilizing more grab and go, maybe a grab and go breakfast program or a grab and go lunch program? And what about increased efforts for farm to school? Is that in the plans? Do you currently have a beef to school program? Do you anticipate expanding that? Those are all things that need to be addressed in the RFP. So just something to think about. Just spend some time thinking about what you anticipate for your school district in the next 5 years that would have an impact on your school food service program. Next slide. Well, another starting point in the contracting process is to contact other school districts that have a food service management company contract. You may very well be happy with your existing company if you are rebidding, but we encourage you to reach out to other school districts that maybe have another company. And it's a simple phone call. It can be a visit to observe meal service operations, but we encourage you to do that, to explore all of your possibilities and be educated on what is provided by other companies. We currently have 5 food service management companies operating in Nebraska, and we have 4 companies that are very interested in operating in Nebraska that have reached out to our office of their interest. So on page 71 and 73 of the RFP document, you will find the list of schools and companies that are currently operating or have expressed interest in operating in Nebraska. Next slide. So get ready, get set, go, preparing that RFP document and completing the exhibits. We have a timeline in place and you need to be aware of that timeline. The RFP was released on October 31st. It was sent to you via email. It included the RFP template and the exhibits, as well as some supporting information that will help you through the process. In that same email with the release, you know which program specialist you will be working with, and their contact information has been included. That program specialist will be working with you throughout the process, so address any of your questions that you have to your assigned program specialist. And your program specialist must receive your completed RFP template and exhibits no later than January 15th. Now, I know that's not a lot of time, especially when we have some holidays in there, but begin working on it now. Now, once it's submitted to NDE by January 15th, your specialist will be working with you to clarify any information that isn't clear. And it will be a back and forth process to make sure we have a very clear and concise document that is released to the food service management companies so that they have enough information to provide a responsive and responsible proposal back to you. So once again, your responsiveness is critical in order to get a contract in place by July 1st, 2023. And we realize that you are juggling a lot of responsibilities, but please be aware that there is a timeline that you must follow, and it is a process. And we will be going through that process as we complete the RFP template in just a little bit. So let's move to the next slide. So there is really good news that we are not going to be reviewing the 72-page RFP template completely, because a lot of it is just the required rules and regulations of the program. We are only going to be focusing our attention on those areas that need your response. Erica will be going through the exhibits after we go through the RFP template. So we will be providing you information. We've provided you a sample of how to complete the RFP. And so if you have your example that was emailed to you, if you have printed it or want to pull it up on your screen, that's great. We're just going to now go through the template. So let's move, and we're going to give Allie just a minute to pull up that screen. Thanks, Allie. Now on your screen is the first page of the RFP template. And it's pretty easy. You just fill in your school district name. You can just proceed on down, Allie, and it looks great on the screen. I'm going to talk about some of the most important things that are in the template and want to make sure that you are aware of some of the language. Now, I do want you to thoroughly read the RFP, but some things that I want to stress include that we strongly advise our school districts, our school food authorities to consult with their legal counsel as necessary. These are big contracts. They have big dollar values. And we want to make sure that your solicitation is very clear and accurate. We review your RFP template, your completed RFP template and exhibits to make sure that, we feel it is clear, but we don't provide legal advice. And that is your responsibility. It is your contract. We're just ensuring that you are following the correct procurement procedures. So do be aware of that. And then as we move on down, we can see that it's NDE must approve the entire request for proposal package prior to solicitation. You can't release it. You can't prepare your notification for the newspaper without it being approved by our office. And in the next section that has the red box around it, just want to make sure that you are aware that you must submit the following items for our review and approval as you proceed through. You can send them all in at once, or you can send them in as they occur. And we are required to save these pieces of information. And the purpose is just to make sure that each of our school districts has followed proper procurement procedures. So let's move on down. We provide a sample notification once the RFP package, which includes the template and exhibits, has been approved by our office. You are required to place the notification in the Omaha World Herald. The guidance manual from USDA states in a newspaper that has statewide distribution, and that would be our Omaha World Herald. The notification only has to appear one time in the newspaper, but the same notification must be sent to all food service management companies listed on pages 71 through 73 of the RFP. So that would be our 9 companies that have expressed interest or are currently operating in Nebraska. And the purpose is to make sure that you are having, you want responses from as many companies as possible. And you are going to select the company that is most responsive to your needs. So we provide the sample notification. It's certainly not very long. It just needs to appear in the newspaper. And then let's talk about the timeline. On November 1st, we actually released the RFP on October 31st. On December 1st, our SFAs that are considering contracting must let NDE know that they need the RFP package. It's already been sent to you, so you do not need to provide notification to our office. We know you are interested. This would be for other SFAs that would contact us later, that we need that notification by December 1st. You do not need to notify us. The deadline for SFAs to submit the completed RFP package to NDE is January 15th, which we've already discussed. March 1st is the last date for the RFP notification to appear in the newspaper with statewide distribution. And the reason for the March 1st date is the solicitation period is 60 days from the date the notification appears in the newspaper and is emailed to those companies expressing interest or operating in Nebraska. That's the start date of the 60-day solicitation period. It can be longer than that. It just cannot be shorter than that. May 15th is the deadline for NDE to receive the contract, the proposal. The template turns into the contract. The proposal is part of the contract. And then any addendum that is needed for clarification purposes all become part of the contract. NDE must approve that as well before the contract can be signed and executed as of July 1st. So once again, the reminder for the contract year is July 1st through June 30th. Next page, please, Allie. So who is going to be in charge of this process? It can be whoever the school has decided will be in charge of the process. Many of our schools, it's the superintendent, it's been the bookkeeper. It's your decision who is the contact person for this process. So I just want to emphasize the food service management company must submit a complete response to the RFP, including all certifications, in order to provide a responsive proposal. So proposals must be responsive and responsible. Under important information, the procurement method is the NDE fixed price RFP contract template. It must be used. Please do not edit the RFP document. There are places in the template where additional information can be added, but please do not edit the contents of the template. Only complete the fillable sections. The SFA must utilize the weighted award criteria identified in the RFP. We'll go through that. And once again, responsive and responsible food service management companies whose proposal is most advantageous to the SFA with price and other factors considered must be evaluated. So when a proposal is submitted, there is always the chance that maybe information is not clear in the proposal. And so with that, we will help you with that process. And as a result of clarification, there may be an addendum to the proposal. And that would be the food service management company's responsibility to provide additional information to clarify their proposal. All procurement transactions shall be conducted in a manner that provides maximum open and free competition. So we want to give everyone a level playing field. So once again, the importance of having a complete and accurate RFP template and exhibits that demonstrate what is currently happening in your school food service program and your anticipated needs in the future. Moving on down. In the template, we have the RFP contract timeline, and inserting dates is one of the last steps before submitting the RFP to NDE for final approval. Your assigned NDE program specialist will work with you on your RFP contract timeline. And so initially when you submit by January 15th, you don't have to insert dates in this section. You can, but more than likely they might change due to our review of the proposal, as well as your timeline about getting back with us with clarifying information. So just be aware of that there is specific dates, such as start of the minimum 60-day calendar day solicitation, which we've already discussed. That starts the date the notification is placed in the newspaper. Approximately 2 weeks after the advertisement, the pre-proposal conference, which is conducted on site. The deadline for receiving proposals at least 60 days after the date of notification. The committee that scores the proposal, you'll need to be thinking about who members of that committee will be, and that needs to be happening within 5 days, business days of when proposals are received. And then when do you want to take it to the board, after you've made your decision? And you need to submit everything to your program specialist, and that can be prior to board approval, which is probably a good thing, because it may result in that additional addendum for clarifying information. So just a process. Scroll down just a little bit more, Allie, on that timeline. And then notification to food service management companies that don't receive the award of the contract. When do you plan on notifying them? There is no set timeline for that, but you will want to notify them that they didn't receive. And then just making sure our office has received all the required signature pages prior to implementation of the contract. So scroll on down, Allie. I think we've covered the timeline. I've mentioned the mandatory on-site pre-proposal meeting. Where will that be? Where do you want prospective food service management companies to meet you? This is a mandatory on-site pre-proposal meeting, which will definitely indicate if companies are interested in your account. The first indication is when you send the notification out to those companies that you are going out for bid, and they have to request the RFP document as well as the exhibits. And you will send that to them after they notify you that they are interested in receiving. The next indication of who is interested in contracting with your school will be if they attend the mandatory on-site pre-proposal meeting. The meeting needs to be conducted on a school day, and companies are interested in seeing the food service operation in action. They want to see what equipment you have, the layout of the kitchen, the layout of the serving areas. They want to see all that because that helps them know what type of menu they can offer, what your facilities have. So it needs to be on a school day, and they want to see as many different sites as possible. And so at a minimum, they need to see if you have an elementary building, a preschool program that operates in a separate building. They want to see middle school, high school, and then any alternative feeding locations that you may have. They want to see that. Now, all questions need to be submitted from companies in writing, and then you will respond in writing to all companies that have asked questions. So you are not going to be answering any questions at your pre-proposal meeting, because those, once again, need to be submitted in writing. And in the template, we have a timeline for the submission of questions, and then a timeline for the district to respond to those questions. And so it's 30 days prior to the submission of the proposal, companies can ask questions. And then school districts need to respond 15 days, at least 15 days prior to the submission of the proposal. Just getting all of that information back and forth so that companies can make a good proposal. So let's scroll on down. So when proposals are submitted, they are required to submit 2 hard copies of their proposal and 1 electronic copy. And that can be in email form, that can, because that electronic copy needs to be forwarded to your program specialist for review. Some schools or some food service management companies provide the proposal on a flash drive, but most of them now just send it electronically. So be aware of that. And there's a procedure of how the hard copies must be submitted. Any proposal received after the deadline, as indicated in the timeline, is considered non-responsive because they didn't comply by the date indicated in the RFP template for submission. So those will not be reviewed. And then as we move on down the page, we can see that I've talked a lot about, you need to anticipate what your needs will be moving forward. And in Appendix A of the RFP template, that provides the SFA the opportunity to include any additional services that they want to make sure are included in the proposal. So moving on down. I just highlighted number 11 or underlined number 11, that Appendix H, I, J, and K are documents that the food service management company must complete. It's in regard to lobbying, independent price determination, all those certificates that a company has to complete. And then the award criteria. Number 12, the SFA must select a committee, and a committee is at least a minimum of 2 members that are charged with evaluating the proposal and utilizing the weighted criteria in the RFP. And we'll look at that in a little bit. Each committee member must evaluate the proposal independently and assign a point value to each award criteria. So the scoring cannot be done as a group. It's independent evaluation and scoring of the proposal. And that information is submitted to NDE. That's one of the pieces of the information that you must submit. And, you know, just to make sure that I emphasize this enough, your scoring must clearly indicate why you have selected the company that you have. We have had food service management companies request completed combined scoring sheets when not awarded the contract, because they want to know, well, where did we fall short? Why didn't we get the contract? So you want to make sure that your scoring is very clear on why the company you have selected receives the contract. So moving on down. This is the section where you will assign points to the following criteria. And all of the award criteria is information that the food service management company is required to include in their proposal. Cost must receive the highest number of assigned points according to USDA regulations, but it is your decision on how you award that point value. In the example on the screen, we can see that we have 30 points awarded to cost. And then the other award criteria is, you know, what's most important to your school district. The total must add up to 100 points. So as you work with your evaluation team, it's certainly acceptable to have your own criteria on how you are going to assign points. With 30 points for cost, what are you going to be looking at? You're going to be looking at the cost, fixed meal pricing for each meal type. You're going to be looking at the guarantee the food service management company has provided. So how are you going to weight that when you assign those 30 points? Moving on down. So in this section, you're going to mark what your current program services are that you are providing at your school. What current program services? So in this example, this school is doing a lot of things already. They participate in lunch, breakfast. They have an alternate breakfast program. They have preschool meals served in a classroom or a separate area. They participate in the summer food service program. They offer a la carte adult meals. They have catering. They vend meals to a childcare facility and also to a private school in town. They have farm to school. Allie, if you'd scroll down just a little bit. They have farm to school. They've defined what their farm to school efforts are. They receive 1 donated beef annually, and the program pays for processing. They have school gardens, and the FFA donates tomatoes and lettuce to the food service program. They have a local orchard that donates apples in October. They have milk breaks not claimed through NSLP or CACFP, which is the Child and Adult Care Food Program. And milk breaks are offered to pre-K and kindergarten. They have a school store called the Tiger Den at the high school, where a la carte and reimbursable meals are offered for both breakfast and lunch. And they have an open campus, which is very important to indicate, because that indicates that participation for the program. 12th graders, fourth quarter only, can leave campus. So that would be an indication perhaps that fourth quarter, I wouldn't have as many 12th graders participating in the program. And that's very important for a food service management company to know. And then under other, they've included their second chance grab and go breakfast offered after first period in high school. So they offer the traditional breakfast, and then they have a second chance grab and go breakfast. Another indication of participation, offering the two different breakfasts to the high school students, would encourage participation in the program, and a company would want to know that. So let's scroll to the next page for anticipated future programs. And so this is planning for the future. You know, what do you anticipate? And we would encourage you to mark almost every item on this form, even if you don't know if you will be implementing it in the next 5 years, because at least if it's in their original solicitation, then companies are aware of it. And it would not result in what we call a material change to the contract, because it was in the initial solicitation. So if you do not know a date of when you would be implementing, you can leave it blank, because no date is known. So for this school, we can see that they've marked that they're going to implement an after-school snack program. They are going to have a snack program for preschool. It's a non-reimbursable snack because they already are participating in breakfast and lunch. It doesn't fall into the category of after school. It's a midday snack. They've marked Seamless Summer because I want to remind you, we are still in a pandemic and we have operated a lot of different programs the last couple of years. That last year we operated the Seamless Summer option. So would want to make sure that's marked, just to anticipate perhaps the unknown of what the future means. Special milk program, fresh fruit and vegetable program, which is a grant funded program for schools that have over 50% free and reduced. They have the option to apply. And with economic conditions as they are, we don't know, what the future holds for your family. So perhaps you would be eligible in the next 5 years. So mark it. At-risk meals, which are meals that are offered in the evening for schools that have higher percentages of free and reduced. That's a program offered through the Child and Adult Care Food Program. Vended meals, vending machines, concessions, increase farm to school efforts. You want to expand that program. This school already has a school store operating at the high school, but maybe they want to think about expanding a school store to the middle school. Open campus, unknown. We know from current operations it's open fourth quarter, but perhaps the school board in the future could say, well, let's expand that for our seniors as a special privilege or something. So unknown. And then, of course, provision to provision, the CEP provision. Just those are all different options that, based on free and reduced percentages moving forward, that may be an option for your school district. And I know under other, that's very tiny to read, but opening a new elementary, expanding on that. The school has indicated that they are planning on opening a new school in school year 24-25, remodeling the high school in the future, which may impact the food service at the high school, increased vending, looking at perhaps expanding snack vending. So just indicating all those potential things that could happen in the future. So let's move on down. This section addresses additional food service. These are pre-marked in the template, but you can change these. We've marked them because they're all possibilities in the future. And I wanted, in the box, we've got some important instructions regarding catering. Catering is outside of the nonprofit school food service account. So the company bills the club or organization requesting the catering separately and receives payment. So that does not flow through the nonprofit school food service account. It's considered non-program. And so information about that is included in the RFP. And keep on scrolling, Allie. This is all just information according to regulations, and then of course the areas where you are required to indicate a response. So now we've moved down to providing fluid milk substitutes for students who request a substitution. And there's two types. If a household submits a medical statement signed by a licensed healthcare professional that indicates that a milk substitute must be offered to a student, then the school is obligated to comply. But without that signed medical statement by the licensed healthcare professional, if a household submits a request, then based on preference that doesn't rise to the significance of a medical statement, then it's the school's district's decision to offer a milk substitute. And so that's where you are required to indicate if you will or you won't. So in this example, the district wants the food service management company to provide a milk substitute for students that has the same nutritional composition as cow's milk. And why we've included that is that those substitutes can have an additional cost. And so we want to make sure that the company is aware that is what the district wants. And so they can include that cost in the fixed meal price they propose. So that is why that section is there. So let's scroll on down. And purchases. The SFA must check one of the purchasing options stated below. And we have pre-marked, except for Exhibit D, Chart 8, designated program expenses duties. The SFA will do all purchasing for the food service program. So what that means is what's marked in chart 8 is what the district is responsible for and what the company is responsible for. And so with that being said, the company will include the cost of food, labor, all those things in that fixed meal price, other than what the district has marked for their responsibility. So let's scroll on down. USDA Foods, your school district receives entitlement. Entitlement is that bank account that your school district is entitled to for the purchase of USDA foods, formerly called commodities, and allocation of those entitlement dollars to the DoD Favors Program, which is the fresh fruit and vegetable program. So entitlement dollars can be used in those two areas for purchase of brown box and for processed items, and also for the purchase of fresh fruits and vegetables through the DoD Favors Program. So this section we have pre-marked for you, and Chad Moore is the director of USDA Foods, and we've included his contact information. USDA Foods is administered through Health and Human Services. They're a different agency than our agency under Nutrition Services under the Department of Education. And so we would encourage you to reach out to Chad if you would like additional information on, if you have questions about USDA Foods, how it works, reach out to Chad. But we have pre-marked this section for you based on guidance from Chad to make sure that we have included every option. And Allie, if you'd scroll on down, a requirement of a food service management company is to propose a fixed meal price as though no entitlement dollars are available. The company is required to credit the district back for the use of USDA entitlement used in the month. So all of this explains that in this section. So please read it, and let's scroll on down, Allie. Then employees. You must designate what will happen with current SFA employees, especially if you are a self-operated school district that is looking at contracting with a food service management company next year. You must designate what will happen with those employees. The food service director has to be an employee of the company. But what about the other staff on board that are food service employees, and even those district staff that are performing food service functions, such as maybe paras operating the point of service or the cashiering stations in the food service? You know, what is the plan? And even for our SFAs that are on this training now, this is the time if you want to indicate any changes moving forward with a new contract, you need to be thinking about what those changes would be. Perhaps you have existing district staff that are performing food service functions, but in a new contract, you want those positions to be food service management company employees. So some decisions need to be made in this area, and who will be employed by the food service management company. Their employment status will be for the duration of the contract. So that is the initial year plus the 4 annual renewals if you choose to opt for each one of those annual renewals. And so, just give that some thought, and it's explained further in Exhibit D, and Erica will be going through that in more detail as she looks at that. And let's scroll on down. Okay. The SFA will allow the food service management company to submit proposals which include a full-time on-site food service director not shared with any other school district, or the district is open to sharing and would take proposals for both a full-time and a shared food service director. You can mark both of those boxes, and then the company is required to submit a proposal which would have different pricing based on, full-time on-site versus a shared. And they would need to indicate, how often the on-site food service director that is shared would be available. So a little bit more detail in the proposal from the company. And many of our districts have shared, not the majority by far, but some of our school districts that have food service management companies do have shared directors, and that's certainly up to you if you're willing to accept that. So let's move on down. And this is the most important page of the template that the food service management company is required to complete. It's pricing. They will complete their pricing for each program you have indicated that you currently participate and plan to participate. And it's very important that you have pricing for all planned programs. So essentially, based on our guidance to you, this should be completed for each line, because there is that potential in the future that you may operate these programs. And I do not know why there's $2,000 in our special milk program. I think that's an autofill by accident. Because this would be a food service management company responsibility to complete, as well as providing you what the guarantee is. What is their guarantee for the initial year of the contract? And it's the same guarantee for each renewal. And the total value of the contract needs to be completed. So let's scroll on down. This is the section where the food service management company will indicate what their guarantee is, and it could potentially be 0, which they're not providing a guarantee. And that would be used as you evaluate the proposals that you receive. Which one is most responsive And remember, in our example, cost received 30 points. And so based on the fixed meal price plus the guarantee, you would score based on that information, the proposals. So let's move on down. Equipment, important definition of non-expendable equipment. Typically, equipment that's over $5,000 in value is considered non-expendable equipment. And you need to indicate if the SFA will be doing the purchasing of all non-expendable equipment, or if the FSMC will be financing non-expendable equipment. And this is the section where I'd advise you probably to mark that you will be doing the purchasing. Remember, this is a 1-year contract, and you have to indicate if the contract would end, what would happen if the food service management company purchases the equipment. So Allie, if you'd scroll on down, you have to mark what will be happening. Will you reimburse the food service management company for unpaid portion of the equipment? Will you turn the equipment back to the company? It just makes it a little bit more messy, especially with equipment, because company takes their equipment, then you end up having to purchase it anyway. So this is a section that does require you to give it some thought and complete. Moving on down. What's included in the contract? The RFP, the RFP becomes the contract. The proposal is part of the contract. The exhibits are part of the contract. Any addendum becomes part of the contract. Let's move on down. The signature page that cannot be signed till after all pieces of the contract have been provided to NDE for approval. Appendix A is the opportunity to add additional information of what you want. And this is a section where you need to really think what your expectations are of a company. And, in this example, minimum of 2 hot entrees offered daily, with at least 50% of entrees being from scratch. Minimum of 2 fresh fruits, 2 canned fruit, and 5 fresh vegetables offered daily on fruit and vegetable bars. Expanding grab-and-go breakfast meals to elementary and middle school. Detailed plan of increasing participation in all schools for both breakfast and lunch. And, assist in planning the new elementary kitchen opening in school year 24-25. It's really what your expectations are. And so this is just an example for you to have some ideas on maybe how to complete yours and what's important to you. So let's move on down. And then Appendix B addresses the summer food service program. If you operate the summer food service program, there are specific details that a company has to be aware of. In Appendix B, there's also Appendix C for the child and adult care food program. And it's included in this section, but if the contract has a value, a total value over $250,000, okay, even if you don't operate the summer food service program, then both a bid bond and a performance bond is required from the food service management company. So those are things the company must submit proof of to the SFA. The total value of the contract is over $250,000. And so on the next page, not Allie, it's not there because it's just information. It explains the bid bond and performance bond in more detail. We're not going to spend time on it now because it's already included in the RFP. Let's move on down. And these are just those appendixes that I mentioned earlier that require signatures. Appendix J, independent price determination certificate, requires both the SFA and food service management company need to sign off on these forms as part of the final contract. These are signature pages that must come into our office. And let's scroll on down. And this is a sample that we've included the award criteria scoring sheet for food service management company. Submit scoring sheets for each committee member and the total combined scoring sheet to your NDE specialist. We've just developed a form for you that is helpful for your evaluation team to utilize. And so that's included as attachment 1 in the template packet. And I believe, let's scroll on down. And once again, page 71 through 73 includes those companies currently operating in Nebraska, plus the school districts that the company operates in. And so there's contact information. You'll utilize those email addresses when you send out that notification that your school is interested in receiving proposals. You'll utilize these email addresses. And then we encourage you to reach out to schools on the list that have the different companies and do your own review evaluation. Once again, it can be as simple as a phone call or a visit to observe meal service operations, just to see how the different companies operate in districts. So with that, we are going to give you a stand and stretch break for about, how about we just let you stand and stretch? So if you'd like to get up and do that, that'd be great. I know you've been sitting a while. If you need to take a little bit longer break, that's fine. We're going to turn it over to Erica, and she's going to be talking about completing the exhibits.
But I am going to go ahead and get started so that we can finish on time. In addition to the RFP template that Sean just reviewed with you, exhibits A, B, C, and D are also a required part of the RFP package. These exhibits are where you will need to create a picture of your food service program for someone who may have no idea about your school or how your food service program operates. The first exhibit we will be discussing here is Exhibit A, Site Information. This chart lists some general information about each feeding site. On this chart, you will need to list all feeding sites where food is prepared and or eaten. Be sure to list any alternative feeding sites or vended locations here as well. If you have too many sites to fit on this chart, which some of you probably will, you can add additional pages or put this information in a document or spreadsheet that you create yourself containing that same information. If you need additional pages of this form, just contact your NDE specialist that you are working with and let us know, and we can help you with that. In this example, you can see that this SFA has listed the high school, middle school, elementary schools, their preschool, that Tiger Den school store, and the private school and childcare in town that they contract and vend meals to. They have indicated the enrollment for each site, the grades served, if the meals are prepared on site at that location, or if they are prepared at a satellite location and then delivered to that site. It would also be good to indicate either here or in the additional information section if the meals are sent in bulk, where the staff at that location then portion out those meals, or if they are sent as prepackaged unitized meals where the meal is already pre-portioned or pre-plated for that site already. They've also listed the number of serving periods for lunch and the beginning and ending times for breakfast, lunch, and after school snack meal service. This, of course, will vary depending on your school. Another important column on this chart that I wanted to point out is the number of serving days. You want to make sure that this is accurate because food service management companies may base part of their outcome and or their guarantee on the number of serving days. So for example, maybe the pre-K only goes Monday through Thursday. That would be a different number of serving days than, let's say, like the middle or high school students. In this example, you can also see that Lincoln Elementary has the number of serving days listed as 220. And this is because this is the site for the summer food service program. So those serving days have been indicated here and then also explained down below in that additional information box. If you want to scroll down a little bit, Allie will talk a little more about that additional information box. Here is where you want to add or explain anything you think would be important for the FSMC to know, as we have here in this example. The more detailed you can be and the better picture that you can create of your school and the food service department will hopefully mean that you have fewer questions from any potential FSMCs that are interested in your program and from us as your NDE specialist. These RFPs oftentimes, like Sean said, have to go back and forth between us asking for questions and clarifications. So just know that the more complete this document is when you submit it, the faster we can get it approved and you'll be able to move on with your process. So continuing on to the next page, Allie, is still Exhibit A, some additional site information. This chart is meant to be a snapshot picture of the services provided at each location. Once again, you'll want to list all of your feeding locations where food is prepared or delivered, include any alternative feeding sites, and the contracted or vended locations on this chart as well. And then you'll just check all the services offered at each location. Some things to point out here is that the SFA, you, the school, must declare if the food service management company needs to provide contract meals. So just a reminder, these are meals sold to other SFAs and child cares for which the SFA has a vendor agreement with. And then that morning and afternoon milk break, those are that non-reimbursable service that some schools provide to elementary grades. You want to list the grades offered this service in the additional information comments and indicate if the food service management company is responsible for providing the milk breaks and if any other snack food items are to be included and if the FSMC needs to provide those as well. Another thing you could indicate here is how those are paid for. Is it paid from the general fund or how is that milk break and those snacks paid for? And then if food is being provided or purchased for any other group on a regular basis, you can check that other category at the end and then explain in the additional information comments. So we've just listed some examples here. You can see they've checked all the different services that they're going to provide at each location and provided any additional information down in that box below. Next page, Allie. The next section talks about additional information about your food service programs. So this area is your chance to provide additional information about your food service program that has not been captured in the RFP template or any of the exhibits. It's also your chance to further clarify or explain things. Maybe you didn't have enough room to write out all the information. And we've listed several examples of information you might want to include in this section. It is only required if you need additional explanation, so not every school may have to fill this out, but likely sometimes it's easier just to write out in words what is happening sometimes rather than try to explain it in a chart. So you may want to further explain some things in this section here. Next page. The last piece of Exhibit A, site information, the last thing you'll have to do to complete Exhibit A is to insert a PDF copy of any vendor agreements that you have with other SFAs or organizations. And then you'll also need to insert your sponsor and site applications into this exhibit for all programs that SFA participates in. So for your school meals program, that would include your sponsor application and all site applications. You can print these from the Nutrition Services website, CMP website, and I've included a screenshot down below on the bottom there. This shows, I've highlighted in yellow what you would need to click on to be able to print those applications to include those here. So you can either print them and scan them or just save them as a PDF, whatever's easiest for you. You'll also want to include the sponsor and site applications for the summer food service program and the child and adult care food program if you operate either of those programs. You'll want to insert all your vendor agreements and the sponsor and site applications for all programs as PDF documents behind this page and save it as Exhibit A. Moving on to Exhibit B. Exhibit B are your menus. And on this page, you'll mark all programs you currently operate and then insert 21 days worth of menus for all programs the SFA participates in. Be sure to include menus for all grade levels if the menus are different by grade group. For example, the elementary may have a different menu from the high school. Maybe the elementary only has 3 entree choices and the high school has 7 entree choices. And your menu should be from this current school year 22-23. If the preschoolers eat separately in their classroom and are served family style, or eat separately from other grade groups in the cafeteria and are not commingled, then they are probably following the CACFP preschool meal pattern, which is a different meal pattern than the NSLP K-5 meal pattern, and separate menus should be provided for the preschool as well. You also need to include a list of any items that are sold a la carte with selling prices of each of those items. And then if you operate the summer food service program, include your 2022 SFSP summer menus for all meals that you provide during the summertime. So if you serve both breakfast and lunch, include menus for both of those meals, not just the lunch menus. And don't forget to include menus for any of those vended programs that you provide meals for, and indicate which programs and which meals those menus are for as well. On this page, if you scroll down just a little bit, Allie, you can also request that the FSMC submit menus for programs that you are planning to operate in the future. So for example, we oftentimes have schools that request the fresh fruit and vegetable program menus be submitted, just in case they would get that grant in the future. And just some reminders for success on this section is One, you must submit 21 days worth of menus for each program the school participates in. So make sure that the menus you submit, make sure that there are 21 feeding days or 21 meals on those menus. A common mistake we see here is that a school will submit 1 month's worth of menus, but that month has less than 21 feeding days on it. So you might need to submit 2 months worth of menus to get 21 feeding days, as a lot of months just have 20 feeding days. Also, ensure that menus are labeled, indicating which programs they're for, which meals they're for, and which grade groups they are for, so that we know which menus they are. And then once you have all that information, insert all those menus as a PDF document behind this page and save it as your Exhibit B. Exhibit C is the food service financial information. Food service management companies can access the most recent annual financial report for public schools on the NDE website. The financial information section should be filled out for the current school year 22-23, starting July 1st. That's the first day of the new school year. So July 1st through December 2022. In the interest of time, I will not go through this line by line, but just keep in mind you're filling out that this financial information is obviously very important to food service management companies as they prepare their bids. So the more accurate and detailed you can be, hopefully that will also help you get the best fixed price possible. There are fillable text boxes in this form, so you can explain or add more information to each category as necessary. If you can go up just a tiny bit, Allie. For the revenues from cash sales, this information can be gathered from your point of service sales reports and reported in the categories listed here. This will vary by school, so depending on what programs and services you offer will depend on which of these sections that you'll fill out. The state and federal reimbursement funding information can be obtained from your claims for reimbursement. And once again, this will be dependent on which current programs you operate, which lines you will have to fill out. The one thing I wanted to point out here is if you received supply chain assistance funds, there was a reallocation of round 1 supply chain assistance funds on or around October 1st. And the second round has not been distributed yet for those supply chain assistance funds, but they will likely be distributed before the end of December. So you probably will have some supply chain assistance funds to put here if you applied for those. And so if you received any, just include that here and indicate those as such. And I think that's where our $2,000 came from, Sean. I see that's taken out now. So we did have $2,000 in there for supply chain assistance funds. If you have transferred general funds, explain that in the box provided, as the food service management company is going to want to know what that general fund transfer is for. Next page. The food cost and delivery expenses would probably only apply if you were previously self-operated. So if you were self-operated this is your first year that you're going out for bid, then you are going to have some food cost and delivery costs to report there. Otherwise, it's probably already included in your fixed price contract. For labor, you'll include any district salaried and hourly employees. If you pay any district staff for duties related to the school meals program, you'll want to report those figures here. Under the FSMC contract expenses, scroll down a little bit. Under this expense, section only applies if you have a current food service management company. And here's where you'll report the amount paid to the current FSMC from July 1st through December of 2022. And then the last section of this, under the SFA direct expenses, you'll include any other purchases or vendors paid from the nonprofit school food service account in school year 22-23 from July 1st through December of 2022. Again, explain any equipment purchases, repairs in those fillable text boxes. The more information you can provide on these expenses as to what they were, the better. You do not have to put something in every category, so only those that you had an actual revenue or an expense form. And then at the bottom, you'll just put in the name of the person who completed or provided the financial information. And finally, for Exhibit C, you'll need to insert as PDF documents the SFA's school board approved or proposed school food service budget for both school year 21-22 and school year 22-23. And then we also want you to include the SFA's vendor paid list for purchases paid from the nonprofit school food service account for the previous school year. So July 1st through June 30th. The vendor paid list should not include student lunch account information. If so, either delete that or please black out any student names if you're not able to remove them. This RFP is a public document, so we just don't want to have any identifiable student information in this document or the attachments. And just a note, the vendor paid list can also help you complete the SFA direct expense section. If you want to pull that for your current school year as well, that's another way to kind of help you complete that direct expense section. And then you'll insert the budgets and vendor paid list as PDF documents behind this page and save it as Exhibit C. Moving on to Exhibit D. Exhibit D is the last exhibit we have here, and it includes several charts and attachments that need to be completed and compiled in this section. I've underlined the ones that need to be added or inserted in red where it says attach. You can also refer to the fixed price RFP checklist school year 22-23 that was provided in the email that came along with this training to ensure that all documents have been included, and we'll go over that a little bit more coming up here. But this is just a snapshot of all the charts included in this section. You can go ahead and go to the next page. The first chart is chart 1A, labor worksheet SFA, and this should be completed by the SFA for the current school year 22-23. List any staff that have food service responsibilities, including any district food service employees and any district employees with food service responsibilities, such as point of service or bookkeeping. If you have a current FSMC, we commonly see a bookkeeper or secretary that does the point of service or maybe submits the monthly claim for reimbursement listed here, if all those other food service employees are FSMC employees. Now, if you were previously self-operated, you will include all the food service employees plus any district staff that have POS or bookkeeping responsibilities. Be sure to indicate if the position will continue to be retained by the SFA for the term of the contract, and then indicate if this position is paid from the general fund or if you pay for their wages or part of their wages out of the nonprofit school food service account. You'll also indicate the hourly rate, the number of hours per day spent doing that food service task, the number of paid days, and the total annual wage. Any unemployment compensation, and then if the employees are part of a union contract. If they do have a union contract, you also need to include that union contract with this attachment as well. Going on to chart 1B. Chart 1B is the fringe benefits cost worksheet for the SFA. Once again, this should be completed by the SFA for the current school year 22-23. You'll list any staff that have food service responsibilities, just like we talked about in the previous chart. And this chart just asks for the employee name, but it would be helpful if you could, like here in this example, also add the position title as well. Chart 2A. This should be the average number of meals provided to us if you sell meals to any other schools or programs. So the average number daily of those meals provided to any other schools or programs. If you're following along in the example we provided, we emailed to you, it pulled some information from Exhibit A, so there's times listed here, but that's an error that occurred when we made this into one PDF for this training. That will not happen to your copy because you're saving them as separate exhibits. It was just an error that happened when we combined these all into one document. On this chart, you'll want to list the average number of breakfasts served to those programs if you have them, the average number of lunch served to those school or programs, and then for the average number of snacks daily served to those schools or programs or provided to those schools or programs. And then for milk, this is referring to that non-reimbursable milk break that we've been talking about. So milks that you are not claiming if other programs are purchasing those milks. And then go ahead and scroll down to chart 2B. For chart 2B, you're really just going to attach your point of service sales summary reports. So on those, make sure that those include student meal counts, a la carte sales, and adult meal counts. You'll want to include a summary report for school year 21-22 and school year 22-23, your total year-to-date summary report for August through December, so the current school year. Just a reminder here, only summary reports are needed. Those could be monthly totals or a year-end total. You do not need to include detailed transactions for like individual days or individual students. Just the summary is the key word here. And then once you have those, just insert those as PDF documents behind this page in Exhibit D. Going on to chart 3. Chart 3 is prices for student and adult meals. On this chart, you will list your current student and adult prices, as well as your projected price for school year 23-24. If prices for 23-24 are unknown at this time, we recommend that you provide an estimated price increase. You do want to keep in mind when you're thinking about those that there will very likely be increased cost from the food service management companies due to increasing food cost, increasing labor cost, and supply chain issues. So just keep that in mind when you're projecting your prices for school year 23-24 here. Okay, we can move on to chart 4. For chart 4, this is the SFA's charge policy. Here, you'll just check or choose the option that best describes your SFA's charge policy, and then list, if you have any alternate meals, you want to list the food items in those fillable text boxes if applicable. And then also remember to attach a copy of the district's written charge policy and insert that as a PDF document behind this page in Exhibit D. Chart 5 are copies of your reimbursement claims, your claims for reimbursement. So you'll want to either print these claims and scan them, or save these as a PDF copy. These can be found on the Nutrition Services CMP website for all programs the SFA participates in for the current school year, so August through December. And then if you operated the summer food service program, include your claims for summer of 2022. When you're saving the claims as a PDF or printing them, be sure to click on the summary view and then click on the show site meal details we have highlighted here in yellow. So before you print the claim, you'll want to click on that show site meal details. That way it will show you how many meals were claimed at each of the feeding sites. So it'll be broken down by sites and not just a summary. The screenshot on this page just shows you an example of how to do this. And once you have those, you can insert all those claims as PDF documents behind this page in Exhibit D. For chart 6, this is your USDA Foods entitlement allocation and usage for school year 21-22 and school year 22-23. You can find that information by going to the Nebraska DHHS food distribution, the CNP website found at that location, at that link we have there. And that information can be found under the entitlement tab. We have also listed the contact information for Chad and Brian at the DHHS commodities office. If you need help finding this information, then one of them should be able to help you. Like Sean kind of explained before, the USDA food office is a separate office from us here at NDE, and so they have a separate system, and so it'd be best to contact one of them to help you obtain this information to make sure it's as accurate as possible. And then once you have that, you can either put it directly on this page or insert it as a PDF document in your Exhibit D. For chart 7, you'll want to insert the SFA school calendar for next school year 23-24. Draft form is sufficient on this, as we know you might not have your school calendar completed or finalized for the next school year at this point. So you can just say that it's a draft, and then once again, you can either insert that directly on this page or insert it as a PDF behind this page in Exhibit D. And then moving on to chart 8. On this chart, you'll want to mark for each item if it will be an SFA expense or duty or an FSMC expense or duty. You can add additional clarifications or information in the fillable text boxes as needed. And this is a very important chart, so make sure you take care when you're filling this out. We have had SFAs tell us that they've had to go back to this when monitoring and enforcing their contract. So you do not have to mark these exactly like we have in this example here. This is just that, it's just an example. And this chart should reflect what you actually want for your SFA. If you'll scroll down to under equipment, I think it's on the next page here. Under the equipment and facilities, we did want to note that in a fixed price contract, USDA does not allow bill backs or cost reimbursable pieces inside of a fixed price contract. So expenses for small wares or other items cannot be purchased by the FSMC and then billed back to the district outside of the fixed price per meal. So replacement of expendable or minor equipment should be an FSMC expense. and indicated as part of the fixed price and included as part of the fixed price. And then if you can go down to point of sale accountability. Sean talked a little bit about this earlier, but this is another important one. Make sure you mark if the FSMC will be in charge of the point of sale or if the SFA will be in charge of the point of sale. If staff for both the SFA and FSMC will both be running the POS, then you could mark both there. We've also marked both the SFA and FSMC for records supporting the claim for reimbursement, as that is a duty of both the SFA and FSMC. You would both need to be able to provide those records for a review. And then include any down below under the employment section, if you have any other employment requirements that are specific to your district, maybe a specific district background check that you require above and beyond the background check that's provided by the FSMC, you could also designate that here. Moving on to chart 9. Chart 9 is the equipment list by feeding site. You can complete the equipment list by feeding site by either using this form provided, this fillable form in the RFP, or you can also provide your own equipment inventory if you already have that information in a spreadsheet or document. If you want to use this fillable template and you have more than one site, you can work with your NDE program specialist to add those additional forms as needed for each site. There are several examples of equipment listed in each section of this form, as well as additional spaces to add your own. For each item or piece of equipment, you'll indicate how many are located at that site, at that particular feeding site, and if it's either a district-owned piece of equipment or an FSMC-owned piece of equipment. And then at the very end, on the very last page, there are some more additional spaces to list additional equipment, as of course, this is not an all-inclusive list of everything that could be in a kitchen. So feel free to add anything else that you have. And if you already have an equipment inventory, you can use that as well. Once you've completed this chart or you insert your own and you have all the other charts and your documents inserted in this section, you'll save all of this as your Exhibit D. You can see it's pretty long, so there's several pages of equipment. And then, yeah, just down here at the bottom, it says catering equipment. You can also list any other information or any other equipment that you have that has not been included if you need to do that on this chart as well. So now we're going to head back to the PowerPoint just to talk about the checklist that we've provided for you. And then Allie's going to show you how to save all of this information and submit it to us. So we'll give Allie just a minute here to get back to the PowerPoint.
Almost there.
Okay.
Nope. Okay. Bear with me here. I was trying to share it from where we stopped, but it wouldn't let me do that.
I wouldn't let you do that.
There we go.
No problem. Okay. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, we did include in the email with this training information, and also in the email where we sent you the fillable template and the exhibits, we included a fixed price RFP checklist for 22-23. And this is just, it's not required to be filled out, but it's just a tool to help you stay organized, stay on track. Some of this information you may be able to go ahead and start gathering right now. Some of it you may not be able to complete until later in December. Some of those financial pieces or point of sales pieces where you're having to include December as well. But you can just check off the items that you have so far that you have inserted. For each exhibit, it lists all the forms that need to be included under each exhibit. And at the beginning, the first page of this also includes just a picture kind of flow chart of the RFP process as well, if you need to refer back to that, if you're a visual person and want to take a look at that process and read through that. So like I said, not required, but it is really nice. We even use it as program specialists to make sure that everything has been submitted. So it's a very helpful tool to keep you on track as well. Okay, up next, since after you have all this information, now Allie's going to show you how you're going to save it and get that submitted to us.
Okay, thank you, Sean and Erica. I know that was a lot of information we went through. So I thank you all for listening and sharing along with us. So yeah, as Erica mentioned, I'm going to introduce everyone to SharePoint, or for those of you who have used it before, we'll be doing a review of the site. SharePoint is the site where you're going to store your RFP package documents. So everything that Sean and Erica went through, the RFP template, all those exhibits, we're going to go through where to put them once you're ready for our review. So how do you submit the RFP package to the NDE specialist? Once you have started working on your RFP package, you'll need to submit documents and, like I said, the RFP template for our review. We ask that you do not email the RFP package to our specialist, but instead we will use this SharePoint site. SharePoint is Microsoft's collaboration platform. It's similar to Google Drive, which I know many of you already use. SharePoint is a safe, secure site where access is only allowed with permission. Each of you will have permission to access and edit your assigned folder. With that said, use general saving practices and make sure you keep personal copies of every document that is uploaded to the site. You're spending a lot of time on these documents, so ensure you're saving as you go and upload your copies to the SharePoint site as we work through the review and editing process. You should have access to the site along with an instruction guide for quick reference on navigating and uploading documents in SharePoint. That guide was included in the email invitation Sean sent out yesterday. So let's take a look at the site and how you would get logged in. So many of you may have received an email invitation from me this morning. I sent the request out this morning, and if you're someone on this call that wasn't on that original email invite, you may not have this email yet. And I apologize if it looked like some spam. Some people have emailed asking if this was a legit link, if it was from me. I do want to explain the email. We have 2 email accounts at the state agency, and so this is coming from my other email account, which you wouldn't normally receive an email from me. So it will look identical to this. It will say that you have received a shared folder from Allie Lampman, and it will have your school listed in the middle. I'm using Blair in this example. And only the recipients of this message will have access to the site along with the NDE specialists. So again, if you have other people, other staff helping you and you want them to have access, like a business manager or a bookkeeper, you'll just need to give me their email and I can grant them access. So let's just get started. You want to, if you have the email and you want to pull it up now, you can certainly do that if you want to follow along. I'm going to be going through the site and explaining it. So if you got my email this morning and you want to open it, you would just click the blue button to get started. And once you open the email, it will prompt you to request a verification code. The screen will look similar to what is shown here. You are going to select send code. And my example has a Gmail account, but again, I just want to remind everyone it can be any email account that would work for this. I did get a call from someone this morning also that they couldn't find the code after they requested it. So I wanted to mention, I looked up, it may have gone, after you request the code, it may go to your junk or your spam folder. So just a little tip there. You might want to check there if you're not seeing it in your inbox. So you've opened it, you've requested the code. On the second box, you'll see it will give you the code. You want to make sure you copy the code, either right click and copy it or write it down. I also want to note on this screen, the code is only good for 15 minutes. So if you don't go log in right away, after 15 minutes, the code will expire and you'll have to request a new one. And if for some reason you request the code and you don't ever use it, if you request a new code, this code will stop working. Just normal security practices. So you've copied your code. The next screen will allow you to enter the code for verification. Make sure you check the box to keep me signed in so that you don't have to get a code each time you enter the site. So you enter your copied code and you would click verify. Now you've entered the SharePoint site in your assigned folder. You can bookmark this site to your computer so you can access the site easily each time you need to add documents. Only you have access to your school's folder and the NDE specialist. And I'm just going to mention it again. If you have someone else who needs access, just email me their email address and I can give you access. You will be able to view and edit your folder. And if you have trouble with these permissions or with the logging in process, please just let us know so we can help you. So now that we're in the site, let's look a little bit more at the site and the folders on the next screen. I mentioned before in this example, I'm using Blair Public Schools. And you can see Blair Public Schools, and within there are more folders. I like to explain this to a new person as your own personal filing cabinet. You know, it's your filing cabinet with your name on it, and inside your drawer are all your folders to keep you organized. So as you prepare your RFP package for approval, we will be working in the exhibit folders A through D. These were ones that Erica just went through. Here you will add your exhibit documents. And then we will also work in the RFP folder as Sean went through, and this is where you will complete, you will add your completed RFP template. You can see on the screen there are some other folders in your filing cabinet. There is a blank forms and template folder. These are the attachments that were sent out to you in an email. They include the RFP template, the checklist, the exhibit documents. They're here if you need additional copies. There's also an other documents folder and a food service management company proposal folder. We will use those once the RFP package is approved and we move on to the next step in the process. So again, for now, we're just focusing on exhibit folders A through D and the RFP folder. So now that you understand what the folders are for, next, I can show you how you will add documents into the folder. So I'm going to select Exhibit A folder for this example. You can see I have pointed in red to the folder. So you would just click the folder to open it. As you can see, the folder is empty. There's nothing in there currently. And I also want to point out the navigation line at the top I have highlighted in yellow. If you're in a folder and you can't remember where you're at, this is a nice guide for you. It shows you you're in your folder and you're in the Exhibit A folder. So since it's empty, let's go through how you would add in documents. So when you're adding documents, you always upload them to the site. So you're going to click on I'm going to call it a little caret icon here where I've pointed in red. You're going to click on the caret icon next to the upload button, then select files. A file window will open. This is where you will search and select the file from your own computer that you want to upload. This can take a few seconds for the file to appear, but once it appears, you have successfully added the file. So on the top here, I show the computer window that popped up. I'm going to select Exhibit A to put in my Exhibit A folder. So I've clicked on Exhibit A and it populated on my site. I do want to also point out the time day editor stamp feature, which is helpful to see who was in the folder last and when. So you can see the file name is here that I've uploaded, Exhibit A PDF. When it was last modified, this example said a few seconds ago, and it was modified by myself, Allie Lampman. If you cannot upload documents, again, just let us know. It's a permissions setting, so I just want to make sure that everybody has the correct permissions. There were a lot of emails sent out, so if we need to change something, we're happy to help with that. And then again, it's a repeated statement, but be sure when you're uploading files that you're keeping original copies on your own computer. So you have your file in your folder. What if you want to open the document and look at it? Or what if you want to delete the document because you added the wrong one? We're going to walk through steps. You would hover over the file name that you just uploaded. And when you hover over, you will see 3 dots appear. Click the dots and a drop-down menu appears. Here you can open the file to view it. You could delete the file, or you could rename the file by choosing the action needed. Be sure the file name corresponds with the folder name. Example shown here, Exhibit A is in the Exhibit A folder. If we were in Exhibit B folder, you would name the file Exhibit B, and so on. This will ensure we are able to find all documents needed to approve the RFP package in the final stages. Now, what if you need to edit this document? If you need to edit the document, you will need to make edits on your saved copy on your computer, then upload the new version to the SharePoint site. You will not be able to edit PDFs or fillable PDF forms on the site. So what if you need more copies of fillable forms? I mentioned in the previous slides that there is a folder called blank document or blank forms and templates. You always upload documents to the folders, which we showed in prior examples. But if you need copies, you can download them to your computer. How to download them? In this example, I'm showing you how to download the entire folder. So you would select the blank forms and template folder by checking the circle box. It gives you a check mark when it's highlighted. And then you would go up to the download button and click download. And you can see at the bottom, it has downloaded the entire folder with all the forms and templates. From here, you would open the download and you would save it to your computer. Work on the forms and the templates, edit them, save them, and then upload them into the corresponding folder. Also, on this example, I show you how to download within that folder just one form. Let's say I didn't want the whole folder downloaded, I just wanted this single form. Again, you would select the form, you would go up to the download button, click it, and it appears at the bottom where you can open it, save it, edit, and then upload to the corresponding folder. So we hope this was helpful to run through some examples together when navigating SharePoint. And we think you'll find the process of using SharePoint helpful. It eliminates searching endless emails. And also sometimes the emails have limits on attachment sizes, and you can understand these documents get pretty large with some of the larger schools. We're going to help you navigate this site. We've already sent you a quick guide with instructions. The first step is going to be logging in. So we're going to help you through that. It's a safe, secure, and user-friendly site. It has, limited access to those who are granted access, so it's very safe. And we just want to thank you all for listening in. This was the last section. We're just moving along right on time, and we're going to move into questions if you have any, or if you've put some in the chat, we will review those now, or you could unmute and ask a question. We look forward to working with you all and helping you through the process. So thank you for listening today.